DMase, Sonic 25. The game really does. Derek and Adam Bitkin and Connor here with you. And admittedly, I'm a little upset with Derek.
I know.
So Jason is in charge of music today. We all take turns with music. I informed Derek Mason at 9:49 a.m. this morning, and I quote, "Derek, you have music today." He reacted with a thumbs up.
Absolutely.
And right before the show, oh my God, I don't have the music. Oh my God.
You're upset. You know who this affects the most, right?
Connor.
That is true. Connor is most negatively affected by the fact that Derek Mason.
But I got it. Don't worry about it.
He's done it before.
Exactly. Bam. There we go.
Did you send it?
Huh?
Did you send it?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. I got my theme though. But no, when I say don't worry about it, I'm not being like mean or anything. And I said, I got it.
He's talking to himself.
Yes, I'm really talking to myself. Yeah, like
okay. Yeah. Fair enough. We can't wait to hear what music Derek Mason selects today. We have a packed show today. Nick Suss of the Tennessean will join us in roughly 15 minutes. He is in Northern California, where the Tennessee Titans practiced yesterday with the 49ers. They play their preseason opener against those same 49ers tomorrow. So Nick Suss will join us live from the Bay to break down what he saw yesterday at practice and what to expect in tomorrow's preseason opener. Mike Sando of The Athletic will join us at 4. Sando published, I believe it was last week, his annual quarterback tiers list. Very popular man last week. So I'm glad we have him on the program today to talk about Cam Ward, his placement on the quarterback tiers, and the insight that Sando received from NFL coaches and executives on Cam Ward. We will get to that at 4 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, Field Yates of ESPN will join us, NFL analyst, fantasy football expert. So a lot of football to get to today. And that's, of course, where we are going to start today's program. And, gentlemen, I would say that one of the core tenets of football is a young quarterback needs a strong running game. Agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Agree.
In Cam Ward's rookie year, the Titans barely had a running game, I would say. It was woefully inefficient, despite Tony Pollard totaling 1,000 yards once again. The Titans, of course, are hoping for improvement in that area this season, but yesterday, we had Ted Wynn of The Athletic on the show. He attended joint practice with 49ers in California, and you asked Wynn establishing a strong running game when you basically live in shotgun 11 personnel, the way the Titans did last season. Here's what Wynn said, answering your question.
How much more difficult do you think it is to have a good running game to support a young quarterback when you're running that much shotgun 3 wide? It seems like there's a trend right now that teams are going bigger with 2 tight ends and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brian Daboll's a shotgun guy. You know, he's done that back to the days where he was coaching John Allen. And the issue with the running game and the shotgun is if the quarterback isn't a running threat, then it just makes it a lot tougher because what you're losing in the shotgun is losing the backfield to go downhill. But if you have the opposite game to go, then that subtraction worth it. Cam Ward is quarterback, like he can move around a little bit, but that's not really his game. He's not like a John. So you lose, that element downhill, it makes it much tougher, and that's why a lot of these running games are getting understanding more, getting those heavy tight ends in. So we'll see what Brian Daboll can do with that. He has put together some good running games before, but it does make it a lot tougher when your quarterback isn't a huge running threat.
So it sounds like, 1, Cam Ward will continue operating out of the shotgun at a high rate. 2, he's not the scrambler that Daboll's previous quarterbacks are. 3, the offensive line is projected to be one of the worst in the NFL. 4, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears don't really strike fear in opposing defense. So I guess what I'm wondering is, Willie Donick, are they even capable of being a rushing season when you consider all those factors?
I'm concerned about it. They were 25th last year in the rankings of rushing game efficiency, 29th in the passing game. So you put it all together, that it wasn't a great offense. But last year was last year, right? You want to see a jump. But concern from the get-go on these trends, because as much of a pro as Tony Pollard is, I think he's limited in how much he's going to affect the game. He is a good, solid back that will do his job. But dynamic doesn't come to mind. Game changer doesn't come to mind. And I'm not sure the passing game at this stage of Cam Ward's career, even though they've got some weapons to throw to that look much more promising than last year, I don't know if it's going to be enough without a really good running game. And so I thought Wynn put some great questions out there. And one of them that we've been a lot, DMase, is Ward a running threat. Can he be a better in that area than he has been? Because listening to Wynn and looking at Daboll's offenses, it really helps if the quarterback can help the running game some. But I'm not sure that's in Cam Ward's repertoire.
Yeah, it's going to be based on what Cam did last year. You just don't envision him, being that type of quarterback that had sort of not followed Daboll, but Daboll has sort of inherited, whether it was Josh Allen or Daniel Jones or Jackson Dart, which they drafted. These guys were capable of running football and being effective in your run game, which opens up space, because now I have to count the run, but I'm sure really those guys. I think shows the ability, which he has, but if he shows the ability to get extra yardage or the first downs when needed, then I think that's they're when they zone him, that they run, cut back for that. And Pollard are one cut guys, so they can find a hole and they can get in there and be even Jackson Dart, but he has to get the threat ability to run offense. That season.
Willie, here is some statistical context for Cam Ward as a runner last season. He had a scramble rate, according to ESPN, 3.7%, well below the league average of 5.4%. Under Daboll, Jackson Dart scrambled a whopping 9.2%. Daniel Jones, 7.5%. Josh Allen, 7.3%. Again, Cam Ward last season, 3.7%. So,
and I think you put out, did you say this? I know you put this in the notes earlier.
Yes.
Number of designed runs was extremely low.
According to ESPN, Ward had only 9 designed runs in 2025. 9 games. Yes, 9 designed runs in 2025. Brian Callahan was fired.
Which I think how we are sort of presented, but next year I don't think you can truly get a sense of whether he can be a big part of the run offense or not. They didn't want to get him hurt.
You're right.
Their job was to keep him healthy and develop him to be hurt. He had get it on one. That's not going to deter me from needs to run more, because he got hurt on one freak play at the end the season. So
I'm not as worried about that as can you run effectively when called upon. I think you have to be careful.
We're not Ward to become Jackson Dart.
Right.
Yeah,
we said he was evaluated for concussions 4 times last year. He didn't even start every game.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't even count a preseason time where he was evaluated as well. So it goes back again to, and Derek, you can help illustrate this for the
Mhm.
fans. Brian Daboll, and you heard Ed Wynn say he's a shotgun guy. And last year, Cam Ward was a shotgun quarterback.
Mhm.
The different coaches, not named Brian Daboll, had the Titans last year in the shotgun 78% of the time. That was ninth. Brian Daboll, coaching the Giants, had the Giants in the shotgun 81% of the time. That's seventh. So they're going to run the shotgun, which means I think it creates these challenges. I wonder about play action
Mhm.
out of the shotgun. I wonder about how well you can run when you don't have the great game-changing running back. You're not going to run as many big sets. That seems to be the trend. So tell me what can you see out of a running game when you run so much shotgun? How do you run the ball effectively
I
out of the
think
shotgun?
you look at Kansas City as the prime example. They are not underneath center. They're not trying to run your conventional run game. What they do is they put Mahomes in the back, shotgun, and everything is predicated off of that.
So
So
his name is Patrick Mahomes.
I get that, but there are other quarterbacks that and Patrick doesn't. I mean, he's not like
He's
this
not a great runner.
elite runner, but he does enough to get yardage when he needs to. But I think the run game can work, but it all depends on the offensive line. Everything, and I know we've talked about this, ad nauseum about the offensive line, and we will continue to talk about it. But the game work shotgun or the run works in the shotgun if your offensive line is doing the things they need to do up front. I think this offense, the way it's built and what they want to do as far as the run game, meaning zone running, they have fits the because these are one guys. Now, I'm not saying Pollard or Spears is going to tell the world. I wish they will. I mean, I wish it does happen, but I think the offensive line is in the bottom of the NFL. If they're in the middle, somewhere 16, 17, run works with two backs in can.
Well, I regret to inform you.
Yeah, I know.
I regret to inform you, at least according to Pro Football Focus, I think this was published earlier today, the Tennessee Titans offensive line rate number
No.
32.
But the start yet.
I know, but there are a lot of questions. One is being disrespectful to Tony Pollard. Some of you may already know this, but there are two running in the NFL logged at 1,000 yards in each of the last 4 seasons. One is Pollard. The other is some guy named Derrick Henry. This will show you that yardage doesn't necessarily mean effectiveness, because I don't think anyone would put Tony Pollard in this class as Derrick Henry. Good for Tony Pollard for 1,000 yards last season, but I look at the things we discussed. I look at the fact that Cam Ward, not much of a scrambler last season, not sure how well he can do it. The offensive line, the fact that Pollard and Spears are, I would say, solid at best. The shotgun as the NFL shifts towards heavier personnel. The Titans lived in 11 personnel last season. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's just when you put all of those factors together, we know how important a running game is. Quarterback, I'm not sure how possible it is for the Titans to have an effective running game when you factor all those things together.
It's all connected. It's not necessarily we have to have a great passing game or a great running game, but it's the balance between the two is the efficiency. And that goes towards your Tony Pollard stat. There's nothing wrong. 1,000 yards is nothing to sneeze at. We have to give him credit, but it's not fantasy football, right? Our fantasy teams, it only is about how many yards did my guy get? Did he score a touchdown? Did I win my game? But that's different than an efficient offense. You could run for 700 yards, but have a lot of efficiency. You could run for 1,200 yards, but not be super efficient. That's really the sweet spot that you're looking for. So it's not really the yards. It's how does the running game complement the passing game in this development process for Ward.
But I think we saw last year as Cam got more comfortable with the offense, the run game started to pick up. The offensive line looked a little better, but when the quarterback started to develop within that offense that they ran, obviously they're not running that same offense. Pollard end up, being more. They would love if he got 1,600 yards, but they just need him to be a consistent runner, which he has been. And you put that on top of a quarterback that's developing, I think it opens up everything. Again, Kansas City hasn't had much of a run game, but they use it effectively, and it may have hurt them at times, during the season or even in the Super Bowl. But they were able to get there, but because the run game was effective. It wasn't dominant, it was effective. And if you're not running like Derrick Henry, people think that, oh, you can't get it done. But if the offensive line gets better, the quarterback continues to mature and develop, I think the running game will get better.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com. We're opening the show with this question. Are the Titans capable of having an effective rushing attack in 2026? 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Nick Suss of the Tennessean will join us live from sunny California. The Titans open the preseason tomorrow against the San Francisco 49ers. They practiced with the 49ers yesterday. Suss was there. We'll get his thoughts on all of that. 615-737-1025 today. Sounds take on Bliss at First Horizon Park. First pitches at 6:35. Also be listening for your chance later in the program to win a 4-pack tickets to the game. First Horizon Park. All of the action on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, Maple Street Biscuit Company, and Social Canteen.
All right, DMase.
Huh?
DMase, Vingit and Donick, 102.5. The Game, Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingit here with you. Let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com, and welcome in a very popular man around here today. Nick Suss of the Tennessean, live from sunny California. Hello, Nick. How is California treating you?
Pretty well. I didn't bother renting a car out here, so I am just Googling how far I am from the train. Figuring it out, I've probably walked roughly 15, 20 miles from here. I'm just exploring the heck out of the suburbs.
Impressive. So yesterday, we parsed all of your practice reports from the joint practice between the Titans and the 49ers. But of course, there can be a lot of noise when trying to assess a practice from afar. You were there. What is the most meaningful takeaway from the Titans' performance in practice yesterday against the 49ers?
Well, now you're putting me in a situation because you're making me decide what's meaningful. I will tell you what was meaningful to me.
That works.
I will tell you what I came away with, which is I have spent a better part of this training camp more or less defending the secondary from the attempt was by saying, okay, start and for with secondary, very they didn't want the field red zone period sit top by receivers who weren't Samuel. There were some struggles in the secondary. Now, have to acknowledge these go longer in training camp than they do in the regular season system. The quarterback structures process through his roots. But that being said, I think that Johnson Batch is being sooner again, so I think that means that he should have been 10 sacks or whatever. I think that's take salt. But if the English years that brought through the natural interface, a long time natural interface was the 49ers being Titans over the top. And that's what a concern for me. Not a concern for panic, but certainly cause for concern.
Another cause for concern, Nick. This is something that's seemingly always a cause for concern for the Tennessee Titans. The offensive line. I know that you and the other reporters out there in California had an opportunity to chat with Mike Borgonzi. I know the offensive line came up. What did he say to you and the other reporters about the state of the offensive line, and specifically the battle for right guard between Fernando Carmona, Cordell Volson, and Jackson Slater?
Yeah, with the battle itself, he kind of echoed the same company line that Salah has, which is it's too early to pick somebody. Everybody's battling, everybody's working hard. He really praised Fernando Carmona's mental makeup and just, I think he said there were 3 qualities that they grade as non-playing qualities. I'm going to butcher the exact words he used, but it had something to do with toughness, mentality, and something like that. Wasn't that scale draft? I think he said the guy 3 words that are 20% again. Makeup wise, even crazy. Also, got to be prepared and then make up the play. I think that's really a trend that I'm seeing across the entire time right now, where the things that worked yesterday, not just guard positions, mental makeup, physicality, and toughness, and preparedness, and that's buying what the teams are reaching. The
We're talking with Nick Suss of the Tennessean, discussing the Tennessee Titans in their practice yesterday and their game coming up Thursday against the San Francisco 49ers. In watching the defense, and there's a lot coming out, and we talked about this yesterday with cornerbacks. How do they look, or are you concerned position. We have a lot of to coming out. Yes, did good. The defense.
A little bit concerned with the operation as a whole than I am with the individuals, if that makes sense. I think that I looked at plays in, let's say, for example, because this was one side of the field, let's say there was a play where there was a bust where somebody had gotten behind Cordell Flott and a money hooker. It's hard for me watching with no replay from the angle that I have on the media to say, oh, this was Flott's mistake, or oh, this was Hooker's mistake. It's hard to know when you don't know what the defensive call is and when you don't know what the handoff was and what coverage they were in. But I can look at it and say, well, obviously somebody got behind and that's not what's supposed to happen. So I don't want to put it exclusively cornerback play itself. I think that if we're putting it to my eye, and please, everybody listening, know that this is a layman's eye. I am not a secondary coach by training, but to me, I was probably going to say 60% of the issue felt like safety play, 40% of the issue felt like play, but just a rough estimate from my eye. So I'm not necessarily evaluating the plot to Marcus Harris in that group, but I'm saying that I think that some of the miscues felt a little bit more connected than what was going on back.
I'll take further that the deep this
Yeah, all the players in the regular 11 might have had one of the teammates. I think that's some yeah, play. He ran really found back in the middle of the field for he played. I thought sort of integrated really well. Sort of integrated perceived a little bit, which is not easy. I imagine that would be confident in attack defense. Just go. I think that's something to work through. Help from Hill and seems to be pretty with Willy. I thought showed belief that NFL caliber can play linebacker well in the system, and I don't want to pretend that that's not still a conviction. But I think that they are going a lot of plays, they're going to make a lot of tackles, and if we also see the front start to create tackles, bridges going to be able to play. The linebackers don't scare me much right now. Great.
Talking about Tennessean, he is on hand out in California watching the Titans and the 49ers practice yesterday, and of course, coming up, first preseason game of the season. So, Nick, your observation, just watching day to day, Tim Ward handle the ups and downs of the training camp, right? And it's a new offense. You got new wide receivers in there. You've seen him operate. I feel like that's a strength of his. But how do you think he handles, like I said, there's a like yesterday where not everything's going to go right.
Something I'm really concerned with Cam for. He has the mentality when it comes to focusing on himself that he can do and the team and what the team can do rather than the external. I also think that when you're talking about process, when you're talking about integration, I think those are things that I really see Cam grow more mature in year two. When I talk to what Cam in this shape and on his practice, the thing I always want to make sure here is has the offense in operation on Tuesday. I thought the all offensively, I thought the plan was working. Really, people have criticized the offense yesterday. It had more to do with the obvious passing downs and the pass pressure and the inability of Cam to get people downfield and some of the excellent they need to be able to do well to graduate. But players he has doing what he's good. timing routes and quick passes. I thought he looked just as in rhythm against San Francisco as he did in the scrimmage on Friday when he, by all accounts, including my own, played pretty well.
We just had a discussion of what to look for the Titans running game under Daboll, especially with the fact that it looks like they're going to run a lot of their plays out of the shotgun again, which we're trying to get DMase's take on what that does. How does that help the running game? How does it make it more challenging? And I always think, Nick, it's one of the hardest things to tell when you watch a football practice when you're not tackling is how effective was that running play with the blocking and things like that. What have you been able to gauge so far about what to expect from the running game?
I think say yesterday I was pretty impressed by the push they got off of the right side, which, given the question marks about Latham, given the question marks about the right guard battle, and given the question marks about Austin Schlottman, I was fairly high-minded about it. I think I was pretty pleased with the way that was working off right now. Yeah, push. Jordan. I did that good to get downhill there. I also came out of the practice noticing something I've noticed quite a bit this training camp, which is that Tajik Spears has a wiggle to him that fits the run calls that have been called for him. That even when he's been between the tackles this camp, he has found a way to find a slice. And if he can parlay that, I'm not sitting here advocating for Tajik Spears being an A1 caliber between the tackles running back, but that is sometimes people because we're not capable of that, and we're pretty the next 10. I think this is going to be a top-tier running game. But I do think that the running game will be good enough and consistent enough to keep defenses honest and to keep Titans offenses balanced enough that I don't think it's going to be enough of a positive that they're going to win because of it. But I certainly don't think it's going to be enough of a negative that they're going to lose because of it.
This is another difficult question to answer now, and it may be too early. But we know last year, Nick, that the coaching staff sort of lost their credibility. We know they fired the coach, but there was a sense of, hey, they're inexperienced and they got exposed some. So is it too early to tell in your mind whether they fix this? What are you noticing about the presence day in and day out of having experienced guys like Saleh, a second-time head coach, and Daboll with his experience? And that balance, Bradley.
Yeah, I think that that's a delicate thing to talk about without throwing people under the bus. But I will say that if you had asked me last year when I was in Tampa and when I was in Atlanta for practices, what to the coaching message, then would have been good for your I think for all criticism or all the questions that I might have about the way the practice went yesterday when it came to actually producing and executing, one thing I question is I've been preaching go play physical, go play fast, go play violent. I saw a team that play physical, play fast, and play the plays, whatever it means, are plugged into what the solid Daboll regime is preaching. I don't necessarily believe that whole group of players were fully bought in left at this time last year. That's not the reason the Titans lost last year. It's not the reason I believe the Titans players in full. I think there are a lot of reasons the team was, and I think that more often than not, players responsible for using and coaches for running it. I do think we need to acknowledge that players play the team. But yeah, players are bought in. Players are playing fast, physical running. Players are running around. They're hidden. They're advantage of physicality of the game. And if that's three reaches, I think that translates to your question of how differently can you sense what the measure of experience is, because that experience is
Nick Suss of the Tennessean has been our guest on DMase. Been Nick, as always, a pleasure. Enjoy California. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
615-737-1025. We'll react to what Suss had to say there coming up next. I do have a 4-pack of tickets to give away to see the Nashville Sounds take on Indianapolis tomorrow at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35. We will be out there tomorrow, by the way. Earn it. Bring this trivia question. 3 preseasons. Played 9 games, of course. 3 preseason games a season. How many wins do the Tennessee Titans have in the preseason? Out of 9 Tennessee Titans have in the preseason. If you're the first one with the Connor Newton, who also doesn't know the answer I'm about to tell him, to see the Nashville Sounds take on Indianapolis tomorrow at First Horizon Park. Again, that question, 3 years out of 9 preseason games. How many wins do the Tennessee Titans have? 615-737-1025. Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 1025 The Game. DMase, Vingan and Donick, 1025. The Game. No, you're not in the club at 3:44 p.m. on a Wednesday.
You're virtually in the club, though.
But what is the thing?
It's
Snake Club hit.
It's house.
No.
EDM.
No. Electronic, man.
Oh, electronic.
Yeah. Come on.
Okay. I do want to point this out. Mike and Gallatin earlier says, you know what the problem was for Derek forgetting his music? The 110-degree melt sun. I continue to refuse to my anti-summer 5 degrees setting.
Oh boy.
1025.
Please use yesterday's metaphor.
A lot of you, no, I won't. A lot of you joined my crusade. There's room on the bandwagon for those of you who hate the summer and the heat as much as I do.
Don't go there.
Well, you can do whatever you want. Well, congratulations to Ricky on having the correct answer to our trivia question for Sounds tickets for tomorrow. How many preseason games out of 9 have the Tennessee Titans won over the past 3 years? The answer, no Alex and Antioch. It's not 1. No Scotty from Dixon. It's not 2. It's 7. The Tennessee Titans are 7-2 in the preseason over the past 3 years.
I remember this is my favorite story about preseason NFL records. So forgive me if you've heard me tell this before, but as a youngster, teenager in Florida, the Tampa Bay Bucks famously got into a big contract dispute with Doug Williams, their quarterback. And he was all they had for a while. And they had a good defense. They had Leroy Selman way back in the day. They had a couple of good years. But they held out on Doug Williams in the contract, and he left to go to the USFL. And this is the brilliance of the Buccaneers. We're okay. That's no big deal. If we lost our quarterback to the USFL, we've got the throwing Samoan, Jack Thompson.
It didn't go so well.
That's a great nickname, by the way.
Yeah, the throwing Samoan. But then they go 4-0 in the preseason. And everyone's like, ooh, throwing Samoan. Bucks are going to be all right. They went 0-12 to start the year. I think they ended up winning 2 games.
Man. That was like the Lions. Was it the Lions or 1 year they went 4-0 and then had a disastrous season?
It was either the Lions or the Browns.
Yeah, it was one of the two.
Went undefeated in the preseason and then winless in the regular season.
So 7-2 in the preseason.
The Titans 7-2 in the preseason over the past 3 years. So
where did that get them?
A win is a win, even if it doesn't really count for anything. But congratulations to Ricky on having the correct answer and winning those Sounds tickets. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be at First Horizon Park tomorrow. We appreciate Nick Suss joining us from California. And yesterday, we talked a lot about the secondary. And Nick Suss, he's a harsh grader. He graded every position group for the Tennessean at practice yesterday. And he gave the secondary a big fat D. He writes, quote, the shame here is the depth pieces actually played fairly well, but the guys just didn't live up to the billing. Amani Hooker had a rough day. Both Alante and Cordell Flott had moments where they got beat. What's the challenge? Oh,
Yeah.
Make you his meaningful takeaway from yesterday's practice. He's been trying to defend secondary and do it yesterday.
I mean, listen, it's get it one and really see if they with do it. But how bad was it? So the receivers that are good, or is it the defense? DBs are bad. Then this comes out about the DBs having a rough day. So I'm look much than what has been told media. And then obviously having Nick on and another game shows us what we read or heard.
Jeremy, Brian was 5-1 in the preseason. That worked out well. Take the season with a grain of salt. Tomorrow, the Titans play the 49ers in the preseason opener. I believe it's at 8 p.m. Central start. So be prepared to stay up late with the Tennessee Titans, who will be starters for more than a series. Playing any.
I actually heard that song last night. Coincidentally, your poor attempt to sing it yesterday.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, I'm just echoing what Connor said. He asked you not to do that again.
Oh, okay. Well,
Just not your best work.
Sorry.
Sorry, Adam.
But here's the question for you guys. I asked it to Nick. I'll throw it to you guys.
Mhm.
Do you think we'll be sitting here in mid-October after they play 5 or 6 games and we say to ourselves, their record is what it is, but this is a much improved coaching staff. They look like a better outfit. They're not making as many game day management mistakes. They're not penalized as much. They look like they've got it together. Remember last year with the K-ball stuff and the rule challenges, all of those things, it unraveled a lot of their direction as a team. We knew last year was not going to be easy for them to win games, but that stuff was piled on top of it and made it even worse. You guys, based on Nick's answer about the buy-in, do you think we're going to be sitting here 5 or 6 games into the season and say, okay, this is a well-oiled outfit?
I don't know, because I've seen teams with buy-in and then go out there during the season and does it match the record? Right? So that's an interesting question because I don't know how much we felt that it was a total buy-in with Callahan. Now it seems like okay, everybody's bought into what solid, sort of like what we're doing years ago with a buy-in, like in the record on the field. You hope now there was about and seems like it is. You was late winning. It was right. Listen, it comes down to the play. Them out playing the best ball. Yeah, Willie, you don't have those hiccups or those embarrassing moments as a coach. Then ultimately should be on the players now. And if these guys go out and they don't do things that we think they're capable of doing, it's not just going to be the players, it's going to be the head coach, it's going to be the GM that we're blaming.
I'm really confident if we are operating under Willy's hypothetical. Hey, what are we going to think about for 5 games? I'm fairly confident that Robert Saleh's and Brian Daboll's ineptitude is not necessarily something that's going to come up. I think compared to the previous coaching staff, which had no experience in any of their positions, will it be bad? Okay. Or it's probably not.
Yeah, what do you consider bad, though? Is ends bad?
That 2 years, I wouldn't say that was. I mean, it's bad in the scheme of the NFL.
Exactly.
Bad for the Titans. No, give an improvement.
Well, that's I think for my question because I expect them to struggle. I don't think they're going to be a great team, but like Derek said, if they just win a few more games than they won last year, that could be viewed as a positive first year. But look beyond the 1-loss record with knowing that the roster is limited. Now, there's always a team that is unexpectedly good in the league, and that could be the Titans. I'm not expecting that, but I would like for Robert Saleh to put his roots down with his staff and say, we're building something here. Even though the 1-loss record isn't there yet, you're going to hear Field Yates later in our show talk about his vision for the Titans this year. He's not expecting anything huge, but he thinks they're on the right path. And I think that will be important because the whole coaching staff thing and the debacle that ended up being, it took up so much hot air and oxygen, and it took away from any hope that you were building towards something. And so they had to scrap it.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on the Titans. Coming up next, Mike Sando, senior writer for The Athletic, will join us. Last week, Sando unveiled his 2026 quarterback tiers for The Athletic. Cam Ward came in at number 25 out of 35. We will talk to Sando about that and his process behind these tiers coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bing at 1025 The Game. DMase, Vingan and Donick, 1025. The Game, Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and Connor Newt here with you. Let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com, and welcome in our next guest, Mike Sando, senior writer for The Athletic and the creator of the quarterback tiers. Hello, Mike. How are you? Yep. Mike, can you hear us? We got you. We got you. Just a little snag here. No problem. Thank you for joining us. So last week, you unveiled your 2026 quarterback tiers for The Athletic. And for those unfamiliar with Mike's work, he consults with 50 NFL coaches and executives to compile the tiers every year. So, Mike, as you start this exercise every year, I imagine you have a rough idea in your mind of how the tiers are going to shake out before you tally up the votes from the NFL executives and coaches who participate. So when you compiled the results and you saw Cam Ward of the Tennessee Titans at number 25 out of 35 and in the part of tier 3, how did you react? Is that where you expected him to be?
Yeah, and it's really not. It's not a full judgment on him because for you're going to get a ton of tier 4 votes as a guy who just played one season because tier 4 is either, a veteran player you don't think is going to necessarily be the answer or start for the whole year, like a Jacoby Brissett, maybe at this stage of his career, or it could just be somebody that we don't have enough information on. So that's going to be a lot of it for Cam. So you sometimes see after just one season, guys will start out, even in tier 4. It's not really a slight on them. So Cam Ward being in tier 3 started a whole year. There were some good, there were some bad. Jury's out.
You had an interesting note in your write-up on Ward in the quarterback tiers, Mike. You wrote that only Drake May had a more extreme split between executives and coaches than Ward, who received all 4 of his tier 2 votes from executives. What were the major differences in how executives viewed Ward and how coaches viewed Ward?
Well, executives are all about traits, right? And they're about projecting for the future. And so oftentimes you're going to see them favor somebody who's got some unproven natural gift. That's kind of their job. Coaches tend to be more into, if the guy's ready to play or the nuances of the game. Certain coaches are interested in styles of play, even for whatever their system is. I'll give you an example. The coaches are way higher on Aaron Rodgers than the personnel people. Coaches love all the things Aaron Rodgers can do. Before the snap, he recognizes everything. He's going to catch the 12 on the field. If you're slow substituting, he's going to use his cadence like an expert to get you to jump, and he knows where to go with the ball. The personnel guy's looking at Aaron Rodgers and going, we need a guy. He's not going to be the guy long term. He can't get out of his own way. He can't move. He's going to go on the McAfee show and say something, and our owner's going to ask me about it, looking at me sideways, all those types of things. It's just different viewpoints. And I always say with these tiers, I love how the ranking comes out, but any one person's opinion tells you about the person too, not just about the quarterback.
Yesterday, Mike, we had your colleague Ted Wynn on the program, and we asked him about what a realistic year 2 jump would look like. Ward, I know a lot of Titans fans out there hope that Ward makes the jump in your exercise next year the way that Drake May and Caleb Williams did year over year. But Wynn brought up Brian Daboll versus Josh McDaniels and Ben Johnson in terms of the quality of offensive play caller. Daboll is compared Johnson and McDaniels. So based on your intel, based on your conversations with the people who helped you with this exercise, what would you say is a realistic expectation for Cam Ward's year 2 jump?
I just think see him start to grow within a system with a little bit more support around him. I mean, I think the people in the league, and you probably know it firsthand from watching it, I mean, something was going to happen with him, right? It was good, it was bad, but he was not just going to sit there. He was going to make plays, and he was going to try to make plays, and he probably didn't have enough help around him. So I think you're looking to see, much like with Caleb Williams in Chicago, you have a new coach coming in. Whether or not Ben Johnson's a better play caller or not, you're still looking for it to to work within what the team's trying to accomplish offensively, and be somewhat gain some consistency in the timing of the offense, and those sorts of things, so that you can become a little bit more consistent and reliable. And I think Caleb Williams did a pretty good job of that, last year, getting at least going in that direction. Didn't take so many sacks, right? There was fewer negative plays, and you just kind of came away with it. And I hope maybe this can work, right? I think you want to see that for sure after 1 year, because they've made a big coaching change, and sometimes it happens a lot where you had the number one pick for a reason. The guy comes in, plays his rookie year, and then you got a new staff, right? It's tough for everybody, but you sure hope that you're feeling like after this next year, I want to see more of these guys together.
We're talking with Mike Sando, senior NFL writer for The Athletic. Now, how much of that, Mike, do you, prior to going to the execs and the coaches, and how much do the execs and the coaches take into account, strength of schedule, who's calling the offense, what they have on offense? Because if you look at Drake May, he got a tremendous upgrade. Caleb Williams, tremendous upgrade. We're hoping the same for Cam Ward, but do they factor and do you factor all of that in?
Yes, they do. And like I said, those guys, the reason they make such a huge jump partly is because after just 1 year, they do get a lot of tier 4 votes, which is going to suppress how high they debut in it. Now, occasionally you'll see like Jaden Daniels came in, and not only did he pass well, run well, he took the Commanders to the championship game, and he went all the way up to number 6 in his first year. That's unusual. So he actually regressed, came back in the second year. I think there's a realistic chance of Cam Ward moving up, but to move up into tier 2, the one thing about those two quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and Drake May, their teams won also. And so it would be unusual in that second year to make that type of a jump and suddenly be hovering around the top 10 quarterbacks in the league without seeing that happen. And so I would be, I don't know if we're totally expecting that, if that's a realistic expectation based on where the team is at, to go that high. But the other thing about Drake May, Drake May could easily slip back a few this next year too. Sometimes people see something early and almost overreact. Derek Carr was one of those guys too. Like Derek Carr at one point, got near that top 10 and then slipped out of it. So I think you do have to give all of these guys a little bit of time to really get a true read on where they're going to be at.
Mike Sando is with us from The Athletic. We're looking at his annual quarterback tiers article that we gobble up every year. And one of the things, Mike, you just referenced it, is I love the graph of the year-to-year journey for some of these guys. The most interesting one I think I've ever seen is Sam Darnold's, who starts in tier 3, goes down to tier 4, and then disappears off the map for a year where he has no rating, and then has to rise back up to where he is now, which is pretty darn good. So to learn with some of this stuff, right? You just talked about the fluctuation that can happen with the very same guy.
Early on, sometimes, like in a tough situation like Darnold was in with the Jets, it becomes easier for the people around him to blame the player and move on and declare a failure. And so sometimes that happens to a young player. And it wasn't like Darnold was great when he was early on, but I don't think he was horrific either. And I think you learn then over time, sometimes if you can hang around long enough and find the right situation. I'm sure Sam Darnold's more mature now, and I think you can do it. I think you can pull your way out of it. And especially, I think leaving that market, that New York market is unforgiving. It's very difficult. The media has a certain tone to it. There's a lot of them. Everything gets ratcheted up. I think it's stressful. And you see Daniel Jones leave there and do better. Shoot, Adam Gase didn't even coach for like 4 or 5 years after he was chewed up, in that grinder there. So I think where you go, that's one of the things I'm interested in with Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll, is they've lived that, and they're in a different place. And sometimes for a team, Arnold going to Minnesota, which is a totally different culture, and I think an easier place. Seattle, away from a lot of places, but you can, it's tough attention, even though they won the Super Bowl. Daniel Jones goes to Indy. You can't get more different from New York to Indy. And so could for these coaches too, who've really been in the fire with where they're at, to come to see.
Speaking Brian Dable, I was looking at the progression of Josh Allen, who is a annual tier 1 guy now. But if you look back to the first couple of years, he was way down there. He was even below where Cam Ward was after 1 year. But as we know, he has steadily become the franchise guy, and Daboll was involved in that. What do you think, Mike, were the keys to him moving up the ladder like that? What has he gotten better at?
Well, he used to just run like a smash-up derby guy. He had some Jackson Dart in him early, where you're just taking on, throwing caution to the wind with your body, running into guys. His accuracy obviously was a question mark early in his career. And, he was probably a little bit underrated in that regard. I mean, he's playing in, Wyoming, and it's not the greatest conditions. But I do believe that he got a little bit smarter with his style of play and did a little bit more within the structure. Now, he's still super gifted with his ability to run, and that's a huge part of what makes him very difficult to defend. And he has the body to back it up for now. He's big. He's a big guy, so he can kind of do a little bit more of that until inevitably, I think it'll catch up to him too a little bit later. But he was frustrating to watch early in his career for the way he just kind of played carelessly, I thought. And so, was that him maturing? Daboll probably had something to do with that. I think Daboll's, as we see the personality on the sideline, I mean, he can be I'm sure he can deliver tough coaching. And I think for some of these guys, that can be a good thing. I think like it was good for Caleb Williams. I think Ben Johnson's tough coaching. I think I'm interested to see Todd Monken is very no nonsense. Kind of interesting to see if that has any effect on Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders. And now you got Daboll, right? Who is a fiery guy.
What do you think, based on the people you talk to, what do you think would be number one question about Cam Ward, whether he's going to be the guy or not, that you got from the feedback?
Most of these guys, it is consistency. So, his ability to, I think one of the comments was, he's a gunslinger, super confident. I think he got to tighten up how he plays the game. So I think that is being able to play with purpose in the structure of an offense and still let your gifts and your natural ability come out. But I think that's a path for some of these guys. I think Josh Allen, like I said, did a good job. I think Caleb Williams did a decent job of that too. Still ran around a little bit, stopped taking the sacks, right? So what's your path to consistency in the league, I think, for him? And I haven't heard like a lot of fatal flaw type of questions raised about him, like that he's, not accurate enough or some of those things. So seems to me like he's got a chance.
Mike Sando, senior writer for The Athletic, has been our guest on DMase, Bingen and Donick. Please be sure to check out his latest quarterback tiers published last week at theathletic.com. Mike, thank you so much for your time. We'll have to do this again.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
737-1025. We will react to what Mike Sando had to say. You can as well. 615-737-1025. Chiba Hut is now open in Clarksville. And spoiler alert, this is not a spoiler alert. I mean, I just newsflash or something. I had Chiba Hut for lunch today. It was delicious. I was craving it. Eric Mason eats it like 5 times a week. And on my way to work, I was like, you know what I want? Chiba Hut. And now Chiba Hut is open. The chicken will be out at the new Chiba Hut location in Clarksville, located at 419 Riverside Drive. Come experience legendary toasted subs, crave-worthy munchies, beer, wine, and sweet treats. Whether you're grabbing lunch, dinner, or meeting up with friends, you got your next meal covered. So stop at Chiba Hut today, see what it's all about. DMase, Vingan and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Billy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Keep up with all of our Titans training camp coverage here on 102.5 The Game for the latest updates, player interviews, and more as we help you get ready for the upcoming season. Coverage of training camp is presented by Tennessee Brewworks, Parman Energy, and the Music City Kickoff Game. Thank you to Mike Sando of The Athletic for joining us in the previous segment. A very popular man last week, as you might expect. Annual quarterback years, very, very well done. If you're unfamiliar with it, he polls, at least he did this year. I don't know if it's the same number every year. He polled 50 combined executives and coaches. He votes, and he put the 35 qualified quarterbacks into tiers 1 through 4. Cam Ward ended up in tier 3, closer to tier 4 than to tier 2. He was ranked number 25 out of 35. And when Sando unveiled this last week, Willie, and I asked him about it, the one thing that really stood out to me was Sando said that the gap between executives' opinions on Ward and coaches' opinions on Ward was second only to Drake May. So, as he said to us, coaches tend to value consistency, evaluators tend to value traits. So, it is really interesting to hear how different people in the league view Cam Ward, because if you're looking at the film, in some ways, it looks rough. In other ways, it looks incredibly promising.
And I think this is a discussion that goes on in all sports. What an executive upstairs is viewing, what they're seeing, as opposed to what the coaches are seeing play in and play out. And there's got to be a balance between the two. I think it happens in hockey all the time, right? Where there's internal discussions between the two sides, right? In football, hockey, baseball, all of it, where they say, well, this guy's really struggling. He forgot to play the other day. And, he dropped, he's making mental mistakes. The people up top are saying, but yeah, stay with him. He's going to get through that. Look at the tools he's got. Work with him. He'll get through it. We like his makeup. Somewhere together, you figure out the development part of this. It's at the center of a lot of Mike Sando's stuff. Let's take Josh Allen, right? We all have seen his arc, and it's been a well-told story that when Josh Allen was struggling, he had a young Brian Daboll helping him move up from tier 4 eventually to tier 1. But yet, you still have that different perspective in Mike Sando's article of an executive versus a coach. Here is the coach. Two things that happened in the playoff game that ultimately they lost in Denver, a very close game that could have gone either way. Here's the coach, Josh Allen. Under 30 seconds left in the first half. He runs for a meaningless 12-yard gain, fumbles, gives up a field goal in a playoff game to go behind 2 scores against Denver. Until he quits doing that, you can't rank him as the quarterback. One of the worst plays I've ever seen. Cost them the game. Here's an exec talking about the same guy. The thing that jumped out to me about the playoffs last year was the physicality and the plays the quarterbacks make with their toughness, their size, their strength, particularly as they advance on. Josh has got that. Obviously, it's TBD to see how he mixes with the new coach, Joe Brady. But one thing that those guys at the top tier do, when you get off the bus on the road, the other 52 guys think they have a chance. So again, different perspectives, executive and a coach.
Yeah, and I think that Cam Ward, it's the trait is mentioned. Exactly, looking, coaches are looking at what watching on film. Where those are, how can we sort of minimize that? So let's think about the game per game. It's about nothing. The game. Yeah, they're always looking to value everybody because they don't know around. So they're always looking from a development standpoint. So when you have a quarterback like him, it's not surprising that some of the execs say, well, I see the trait. But we heard of him coming out of college, he had a trait. From not necessarily coaches, it came from the the scouts that Cam and put the paper in front of him.
Thing Sando told us is that in his discussions with the many coaches and executives for this project, this quarterback tiers project, which by the way, you should check out on theathletic.com if you haven't already, is apparently nobody fatal flaws in Cam Ward's game. We've talked a lot about his accuracy. We've talked we have parsed Cam Ward's game with a fine-toothed comb, and we will continue to do so. But it sounds like people in the league are not concerned that he's missing something that will prevent him from being a capable quarterback in the NFL.
That's encouraging to a point. But I also look at it with something we discussed during that interview, which I thought was pretty cool. It's really a year-to-year, a true year-to-year evaluation. You can go from having the same 50 people answer the same questions about the same quarterbacks, and these quarterbacks have a very different evaluation based on how they played last year. So there can be a, quote, tier 2 quarterback who has a season or two where he plays tier 3. You can be tier 4 and move up all the way to tier 1. It does happen. And so of that, like Cam Ward could take a jump this year and then take a step back in his third year. I mean, if you look at the track of all these quarterbacks that are in this evaluation, you're going to see all directions on this. Like, it's not like once you achieve tier 2 status, you stay there for the rest of your career. It doesn't always happen that way.
I'm looking. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm looking at C.J. Stroud because I think C.J. Stroud is a great example of a young quarterback who's gone through some up and downs. He was a tier 3 quarterback for 2026, winning by one tier from last year. He was a tier 2 quarterback. He dropped 11 spots in the overall rankings from number 9 to number 20. So that illustrates your point, Willie. A young quarterback like C.J. Stroud, who has to endure some of the ups and downs of the NFL, went from being a top 10 quarterback in this exercise a year ago to being number 20 overall.
Well, it's the same for Bryce Young. He was low on the tier pole, and now moves up. Some of it is based on who's coaching and how much can they get out of you. There's a reason why I think this year he showed up as low as he did, meaning Cam Ward. It was because of the offense last year and what it didn't produce. Then you look at Drake May, what McDaniels was able to do. That offense flourished, and he was able to go jump up 2 or 3. Drake May here. So on a lot of it does depend on how they those that and those guys they play there. That is going to put in next way different tier.
They went from tier 3 to tier 2 for 22 overall to tied for 8 year over year. Let's go to our phone line driven by Wilson County Hunter.com and welcome in our friend Adam in Portland.
For Willy and Adam on this one, I think that's what Derek was saying. But if you think Mac, where Mac was in year 2, and put him on this team, would you expect more or less than you expect from Cam this year? And you got to think, like, if you were to pluck Cam and put him on the 96, 97 team, what would you have expected? I'm just kind of curious where you guys would go with this.
Adam.
It's a good question because it just shows the different approach that different teams have with quarterbacks. If he says year 2 of Steve McNair basically for a second full season sat as the backup, learning. He played, I think, a couple of games very late in the season, his first couple of starts in Houston. So it's a difficult question to answer. Derek just mentioned Bryce Young, who they threw into the fire his first year, and in his second year, he lost the job. He got benched, and it looked like he might be gone for good. We're seeing other quarterbacks now with J.J. McCarthy as an example, as a guy that right now is out of a job. He's not a starter. He's got to find a way to win the job back in the foreseeable future, and we don't know whether that's going to happen with the Vikings or not. It might be with another team. So it's hard to know year to year. I don't think we can rule out that Cam Ward takes a step back this year. None of us want that to happen. None of us see that happening. Stuff happens.
Look like you think if Cam Ward took a step back, because Will Levis took a step back.
But when you sit, like to bring it back to the Adam's question, McNair couldn't go up or back on the field because he didn't play.
True.
His first year, no.
And the second year.
Second year, he didn't play it to the
very
end.
But let's go back to the idea of Cam Ward potentially taking a step back in year 2. Will Levis took a step in year 2.
Bryce Young.
And it was ugly. So, worst case scenario, what do you think it looks like if Ward takes it in year 2? How does it look on the field?
Good.
No.
I don't think, actually, if offensive line doesn't play better. I know we talked about it, about the offensive line, but ultimately that's what happens. If he doesn't look good, they're not going to win over 2 games. When he's in, Ward doesn't show the development that he to show. I think he will, because last year from the beginning of the end, he's going to get a shake. But your then real bad, unless this comes in, they are not going to bench. No. It's pretty much you're just getting like the Bryce came back, but these coaches ain't going nowhere. They're gonna be here for a couple years. You go look somebody else this year.
The troubling thing, Willie, we talked about this last week ourselves. At Cam Ward's rookie year statistics versus Will Levis's early NFL career statistics, played roughly the same amount of games. Levis, I believe, has played 21 games in his NFL career. And there were a lot of numbers that are very similar. Now, Cam Ward certainly hasn't had the same issues as Will Levis taking care of the ball. By the way,
the extreme turnovers would be the separator.
Yes, here's a shocking stat. Cam Ward threw 1 pick six last season. Will Levis has thrown 5 career pick sixes.
That's a lot.
So I'm not worried that Cam Ward is going to be memeable every week the way that Will Levis was. But when you look at the numbers, both back of the trading card numbers, the fancy stats, there's a lot that's similar. So if Cam Ward were to take a step back in year 2, it may not be as like, oh my God, did you see that? Like Will Levis with some of the stupid things he did, but it's not going to be pretty.
I would really be disappointed if he got into that neighborhood. But I do think if you look far enough, there are a lot of quarterbacks that do not take a next step forward in their second year. I'll give you another one I'm looking at right now. Mac Jones, as a rookie, 10-7 playoff year for the Patriots. People might not even remember that at this point. And then the next year, 6-8 as a starter, numbers not as good. 2-9 the following year, and then he's shown the door.
But there was a lot of factors in that.
A lot of factors.
They changed coaches, they changed offensive coordinators and everything else.
Yes, but that could end up being what Cam Ward goes through. We don't know if the environment is going to be way, way better. Hopefully it is. Like we're painting a worst case scenario here, but sometimes these things can set a QB back. And Mac Jones was pretty good last year in the role as the backup for the 49ers, and a lot of people think someday he'll get another chance to start. So the path is not linear for Cam Ward. And so, I put those numbers side by side, Ward and Levis, for a reason, because the after 1 year, I think we were pretty optimistic that Levis could get to another level, and he went backwards. So we can't say it's impossible for Cam Ward, even though there's a lot of things that you could convince yourself that couldn't happen based on his makeup and where it's going.
615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to our conversation with Mike Sando of The Athletic. His quarterback tiers released last week. Cam Ward, number 25 out of 35. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, college football season is around the corner. And is Vanderbilt in for a rude awakening? One analyst thinks so. We'll hear what that analyst had to say, and we'll discuss it coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willy Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingett, 1025 The Game.
The parameters I went with were, if you think Vandy's going to be another 9-10 win type team, then you're buying. If you think Vandy's going to go back to the old days of Vandy, then you're selling. But if you think they're going to be around 6-6, then you're hold. So I'm hold. That's where I think they are.
I like that.
All right, I'm selling pretty big on this. I would not be shocked if they were in a dogfight against Austin Peay. I think I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up getting upset in that game. I think they're probably headed to this season. Again, new quarterback. After the first 2 games, the schedule gets a lot harder. I think they're a 3-9 kind of team this year.
Jeez, Pete, there's your aggregation right there. Did Clark Lee insult your family at some point, Bruce?
That was the Audible podcast. It's SEC preview talking about Vanderbilt, and that was Bruce Feldman, who was actually on with Robbie and Rexroad the other day. 3-9 could struggle with Austin Peay.
Might lose to Austin Peay.
Wow.
Selling the Commodores in the first year without Diego Pavia. Willie, how does that make you feel?
I was curious with guys like that, and those 3 guys are all very esteemed and experienced college football analysts, right? Those guys cover it. And the first thing that struck me with that answer is there's still a lack of belief that Vanderbilt has actually risen permanently to another level of football. That the days of what you perceive Vanderbilt football to be are not behind them. They still don't get a benefit of the doubt. And they went on to say in that clip, which I would, it's a really good podcast. I enjoyed listening to the entire SEC preview. It shows you how tough a league it is. There are so many games where you're looking at those games and saying, this is the difference between 6-6, 7-5, or 3-9, 4-8. For example, Vanderbilt at Mississippi State later in the season. Now, the basis of that, of what Feldman was saying, was you lose a. I don't want to use I can't remember if he actually used the G word or not.
He did use it.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Generational college football player. You lose Diego Pavia. That's an enormous thing. No matter who the quarterback is, you're coming back. You're losing that. And you're losing the next best player that you had on the team in Eli Stowers. So they're starting with that. What I think that they are shortchanging is the value of the rest of the roster. They do a really good job, I think, of looking at what they need, how to find talent that's right for Vanderbilt and a fit, and their depth has been outstanding. So I don't think they're going to go 10-2 again, anything close to it. But I think in a year where you have an inexperienced quarterback that is going to be learning but is extremely talented, I still think there's a good pathway to 6 or 7 wins at least, and maybe if things go right, you could win another game or so. But it is interesting. I mean, it's a not a bad argument. Now the Austin Peay thing, I just don't get. I'll believe that when I see it. He could be totally right on that. His argument is Austin Peay is a very good FCS team with a lot of Power 4 kind of guys on the team. And so they've done a really good job in that program. So that needs to be noted. But I don't know. I wasn't angry or anything. I was very curious, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, because remember when Vandy, it was not last year, but the year before, and it seemed like they were picking up momentum, and they had a good record. And I think they had just defeated Alabama, or they were getting ready to play Alabama. And Nick Saban said something to the effect, "I just can't believe it. I can't believe that Vandy is this good." He just didn't want
Well, they had
to
lost
believe
to
it.
Georgia
Yeah,
State before they played Alabama.
And
then they turned around and beat Alabama.
No, but he
the
said
question
this
was going to be, what do they do after that?
Yes,
right?
but he said this during their winning. Like, he still couldn't get to that point where he thought Vandy was that
because
team.
you're so deeply entrenched in the stigma.
Absolutely.
Of what
And I think that's what everybody still is, and I think they're going to be skeptical of the program unless they put together, a consecutive series of really good seasons. Not because everybody's expecting them to not just take a step back, but take a big step back, like 2 or 3 steps back. And they're not looking at, as much as at who's returning from the coaching staff. They still got Jerry Kill. They still got Tim Beck. So they still got 2 guys that have orchestrated this offense that has been high powered. And I get it. I know Diego Pavia was there and he helped a lot. But if you believe in Curtis and what he can eventually do, yeah, they may take a slight step back because they're still trying to develop the young guy or Berlowitz if he comes in. But Vandy does have one of the oldest teams out there, the most senior teams in the SEC. I think that's going to mean a lot headed into the season. And I don't think people are really truly thinking about that because outside of Diego, that is one reason why they won, because they had such a veteran offensive line.
And they are trying to do that same thing. They have 5 SEC road games, Vanderbilt. This is, again, where the schedule makes it more difficult with the 9th conference game and a 10th that you have to play a Power 4 game. So that is another reason to look at Vanderbilt from their perspective and say they could slip. And I think it is a very distinct possibility that they could. Let's take a couple of the road games. At Auburn, a place that they won 2 years ago, a team that struggled last year, but played a really good game here in Nashville and took them right to the brink. Can they win at Auburn this year? That's a big swing game. Auburn is a team of unknowns. New coach, brought a lot of guys from South Florida with him. If they hit it big, they could be the Vanderbilt of a couple years ago.
Yeah.
A team that makes a jump. At Kentucky, Connor, I don't think Kentucky fans are going to sit there going, we can't beat Vanderbilt. They're going to be sitting there going, Vanderbilt, we can beat them. That's October 24th. And then they've November the 7th at Mississippi State. That's another game where Mississippi State is going to be saying, we need to make a jump as a program. We can beat Vanderbilt. None of those games are gimmies, right? There's just no easy wins on the schedule. And even the guys on the panel are saying Austin Peay's not even giving a win. If that's not, but you have Austin Peay, then Delaware, North Carolina State at home. That's a good ACC team. And then you have your 9 conference games that all are going to be. And this is where I think the depth of the SEC comes in. This is going to be my theme. I know you guys you get driven crazy about it. But there used to be games where you would look for Vanderbilt and say, no chance. Those are losses. Then there's maybe one game a year where you're playing a struggling program. You're like, got to win that one. And then there would be, here are the games that are going to swing the year one way or the other. These 3 or 4. But you would also say, here are the 3 non-conference games that have to be wins. Now you only get 2 of those non-conference games that you circle and say, you got to win those. So to get to 6 wins is different than it used to be. Getting to 6 wins is more difficult than it's ever been with the 9th conference game and the way this league is laid out.
But they're not talking about it from the angle that you just mentioned. They're not talking about, because the conference is so much better. He's specifically saying that because they lost Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, guys like that were critical to their success, and now they're ushering in a young quarterback. That's why he thinks they're going to take a step back or regression. So I don't think that has anything to do with the conference, Willie.
Oh, it has everything to do with the conference.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, if they played in the ACC, do you think they would be a 6-7 win team pretty easily, and not 3-9 as the guy just put out there?
Listen, prior Vandy team, absolutely they would be 3-9. No matter what conference they would have went to in a Power 4 or 5. This Vandy team, no, I don't think they would win 3 games. This team that Clark Lee has put together over the last, the program that he's, put together for the last 4 or 5 years. No, I don't think they would go in the ACC and win 3 or 4 games. I think they would win 6 or 7. But they can win 6 or 7 in the SEC as well.
Oh, I think that they will be capable of doing that if they can get good quarterback play over the course of the season. So there's so much riding on that. I think you can say the same thing about Tennessee, but there are a lot of games in this league that are swing games. Let's take Arkansas. That would be the one, and this is no offense to Arkansas, but that would be the one game where Arkansas at home would be the closest thing of gotta have that game if you're Vanderbilt, a team that was undefeated at home last year. But can they still beat the heavyweight, or, a heavyweight or two? Can they beat Ole Miss at home? I think I can see it. Yeah. Can they beat Alabama at home again? I don't know. Can they beat Tennessee at home? I think the answer is possibly yes. I don't look at the team and say there's no way they can beat these good teams at home. But at the same time, I think the coach would look at it and say, well, you could see 3-9 on that schedule if things don't go right, if you get some injuries, if your quarterback doesn't play well, if you don't do the little things well. That's what keeps coaches up at night. And I think the parity and the depth in the SEC, even if you're a good team, you could end up losing or really close games. Fans be really disappointed. Would fans be disappointed if it went 7?
Yeah.
Based on the last couple of years, I think
Exactly.
absolutely. And I don't think they're going to feel much better by saying, but you lost Diego Pavia, you lost Eli Stowers, you had a real young quarterback. The league is tough. I don't think that makes you feel any better. I think the expectations get higher because they've had some success.
The magic number for Ben during the season is 0. 0 is both the number that Jared Curtis has attempted in his college career, the number of scores on the preseason All-SEC team. So a lot of people may doubt Vanderbilt after losing Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, but something tells me Clark Lee likes that perhaps people think it was just a flash in the pan. Diego Pavia came in, did his thing. Now Vanderbilt is going to go back to being Vanderbilt, as Willy Donick would say. So,
but it's crazy how if had Jared Curtis stayed at Georgia and say this, he was going to play his freshman year, no one would be thinking that Georgia was going to win. Or would want Georgia or believe Georgia would win because what they put on tape. I'm trying to figure out why that is where Clark beat him. He's put the last year going to his third year. Team. Right.
That's their biggest strength. They have a no good players. They're to throw out there. Who can pick up the slack and be a game changer? The guys that are coming back, like a Cedric Alexander or Junior Shell, those guys are excellent SEC players. They've got so many more serviceable, solid SEC players. They got more of those than they've ever had. Go deeper or have before. Need a couple guys to tilt the field where they had Stowers and Pavia. So that is a question on offense anyway of how do you pick up the slack for that?
615-737-1025 is Vanderbilt in for a rude awakening in the post-Pavia era. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Field Yates, NFL analyst and fantasy football expert for ESPN, will join the program. ESPN is gearing up for its fantasy football marathon in a couple of weeks. Field Yates will discuss that with us and give us his thoughts on the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1025. Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. DMase, Vingan, and Donick, 1025. The Game, Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and Connor Newt here with you. We are pleased to be joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, by NFL analyst and fantasy football expert for ESPN, Field Yates. Field will be part of ESPN's Fantasy Football Marathon, which begins August 24th. Hello, Field. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So we'll definitely get your fantasy football insight in just a moment and have you break down what we can expect for ESPN's Fantasy Football Marathon. But let's start, of course, with the local professional football team, the Tennessee Titans. Last I checked, their over-under win total in Las Vegas is 6.5 wins. They've won 6 total games over the past 2 seasons. How bullish are you on the Tennessee Titans in 2026?
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish on this team. And I would argue, I would caution, though, when I say bullish, I'm bullish on the process that's in place right now, and I'm bullish on the trajectory of the franchise. I think that at this time of the year, it's very possible to get optimistic about a handful of teams within each conference and feel like they're sort of set for takeoff. The Titans might be a year, maybe a season away from really making their mark in the AFC South and competing for potential playoff spots. But I do believe this team is on the right track. And it's been a mix, of course, of organic growth through the draft, and I believe in Cam Ward and how some of the other pieces in last year's class came together and looked as rookies, but also being opportunistic in free agency and taking advantage of all the salary cap space they've had this offseason, and also all the familiarity they had with a bunch of players that were, of course, available. So do I think there is a playoff spot happening this year in Tennessee? I don't think that, but I do think this team is going to be a legitimately tough out week in and week out. I think the front seven is going to be downright nasty because they can rush the passer, not just with a guy or two, but they've got waves of rushers that give me a lot of optimism about that defense under Robert Saleh.
For the Titans Field, a lot is riding, of course, on the connection between Cam Ward and Carnell Tate. 2-part question for you, one on each player. What does a realistic year 2 leap for Ward look like? And how are you setting your expectations for Tate in his rookie year?
Yeah, so with Cam Ward, I think a realistic year 2 leap is a guy that if there are any questions left over at this point, there will be none by the time we get to the end of this upcoming season. I think Cam has the physical traits that are pretty obvious. If you were to go on YouTube and just search Cam Ward rookie highlights, you see a lot of plays that leave you saying, wow. Now, that's the case with a decent number of quarterbacks around the NFL. These are the best of the best. The part that I have remained most optimistic on with Cam Ward, though, is the wiring, the way in which he is driven and motivated and can lead. I think there are guys that talk about it. And I think there are guys who play about it, who are about it. And I think Cam is one of those players that what he says is not lip service. It feels like it's real. It's backed up by his effort and his preparation and his ability to, I think, lead by both example and by words. So I am optimistic about Cam, the individual and player. You mix those two together, and if you have a guy that could be considered, a future Pro Bowler by the end of this upcoming season. As far as what things look like for Carnell Tate and his rookie year, using sort of fantasy as a hook to get to my expectations, it appears amongst my ESPN cohort that I'm about as optimistic as I think the rookie of the year possible for Carnell Tate. He was, I think, by the end of the pre-draft process, underappreciated. And I understand that there's sort of a conventional top 5 wide receiver in terms of height, weight, speed, and as far as speed goes, that wasn't a hallmark trait for Carnell. Production wasn't the same as guys that have been taken in the first 5 picks amongst wide receivers. But in my early preparation for the 2027 NFL draft, watching both his former teammate Jeremiah Smith and his former quarterback Julian Thayen, you go back and you're like, excellent route runner, very tough in the running game, drops nothing, just really good down the field at tracking the football. All those traits really matter in the NFL. And then every time I open up social media, the Titans are posting a new clip, Carnell Tate, making what looks like a highlight-worthy play. So I have a lot of optimism on Carnell this year. Very excited about what that offense is going to look like with Brian Dable now calling plays.
We're talking with Field Yates, fantasy football and NFL draft analyst for ESPN. You mentioned Brian Dable. And that's what everyone here in Nashville is trying to figure out. And they're hopeful, depending, looking at his prior record with Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, and obviously last year with the Giants. But are you as bullish on him as you are the team?
I am. I'm extremely bullish on Brian Daboll. I think he's done really good work with young quarterbacks. Jackson Dart last year was thrown into a tough situation. Brian Daboll was coaching for his job. He ends up Jackson Dart making his first start in week 4 of the regular season against the Chargers. 3-0. Remember the Chargers when they went to New York? They were the toast of the town in the NFL, and Jackson helps the Giants win that game. He subsequently went on the road to Denver and did everything he could to beat the Broncos and torch their defense. I say that because Jackson came a long way in a short period of time under Brian Daboll. Josh Allen, of course, is the most notable pupil for Daboll in his coaching career, and that was a little bit more of a slow build, right? Josh has reached the highest highs in the NFL, being the NFL MVP just a couple of years ago. It took time. He was a raw player coming out of Wyoming. His rookie season was uneven, to put it lightly. And then by year 3, you're talking about one of the best players in the league. And I think that Brian Daboll, I think he has a really strong relatability to players. He has a way of getting through to guys. I think that his understanding of kind of how to press the right buttons for different types of players and quarterbacks is really unique and important. And, Daboll did not take this job because it was the only offer on the table, right? He chose the Titans as much as the Titans chose him. Brian Daboll had options. And I think the reason why he chose the Titans, or one of the reasons why he chose the Titans, is Cam Ward. I think that's a statement that Brian Daboll made from the moment he decided to go to Tennessee. Probably a belief that Cam Ward has what it takes to become a darn good player in this league.
Now, in a Daboll's offense, the quarterback has to be a prominent figure in the run game. You look at Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, and Dart. Those guys were physical runners. Cam is not that guy. So how do you think that part of the offense work with a guy like Cam Ward?
Yeah, I think it was Cam. While he's certainly not as physical as Josh Allen and not at the same level as Jackson Dart in terms of physicality of a runner, Cam is incredibly dynamic as just a second reaction quarterback. That's what I like to call these guys, who the play breaks down and Cam can make something that the defense has to kind of redefend. And I think that Cam, it's always going to be a balance until proven otherwise. I think we saw some strides with this after the bye last year. It's going to be a balance of allowing Cam to tap into some of that schoolyard magic, which was in some ways like the defining trait of the final season for him in college at Miami, where it was just like, find a way to make something happen. But also learning to play on time and in rhythm, because ultimately in the NFL, these quarterbacks can only be protected for so long. These pass rushers are getting bigger, faster, and stronger. And it's just hard to play schoolyard ball because the athletes are just so good on defense as well. So I do believe that Cam can tap into that athletic ability, but also finding a way to be a pocket rhythm passing quarterback will take his game to the next level.
Talking to Field Yates from ESPN, big fantasy drafts are coming out. So Field, I'm going to combine a Titans question with a fantasy question here. And I'm going to build off of what DMase just asked you. They run a lot of shotgun. They did last year with Cam Ward, and it appears that Brian Daboll, that's what he wants to do again. So how does that affect the running game? And if you're looking at Tony Pollard, who has been a real consistent back, if not spectacular, where does that put Tony Pollard and how you project him with fantasy and his production with Tennessee?
Yeah, we talk often in fantasy football about how, you're not targeting the guys that have pretty good outlook in your draft. You're usually targeting the guys that have a chance to sort of reach the stars. That's why Carnell Tate's a guy that, we have to see it, of course, but I think there's a strong case that Carnell Tate could be the clear-cut passing game favorite in an offense that I'm optimistic on. Tony Pollard, I do have questions about the offensive line, like I'm sure you guys all do, other than Peter Skoronski kind of figuring everything else out. That being said, to tie this into fantasy, while I'm not specifically targeting Tony Pollard very often because I don't think there's this massive upside, my colleague Mike Clay does this amazing work in which he does a projection of how each team's schedule by position looks. So who faces the toughest schedule for a quarterback? Who faces the easiest schedule for a wide receiver? But one of the easiest schedules for running backs this year is the Tennessee Titans schedule. So there's opportunities, and I understand that each year is a new year, but Mike does a great job of using last year's data and projecting based off of how teams look now on paper about who could be in for bigger years than you might think. And Tony Pollard, by that logic, at least has a chance to once again kind of be steady presence for this Titans team. And you can certainly ask Robert Saleh about what a good version of Tony Pollard looks like, because I imagine that that game last year when Tony had that massive rushing attack against San Francisco probably sticks in Robert Saleh's brain every time he sees him.
Field, it's a big discussion here. Last year, even though the Titans were the team that had the first overall pick, their schedule turned out to be very difficult when you took a look at how it shook out. And so we've discussed that a lot, how much maybe an easier schedule will lead to better opportunities for success and to make a jump. So how much do you weigh that in fantasy football, what you just talked about with Mike Clay? Because in the big picture, we know how much people are talking about the Patriots and how easy their schedule was last year compared to what it looks like this year.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's really all of what we're doing in fantasy football is projection. Now, the reality is that you use a baseline of what you've seen in prior years to help you formulate that projection, right? And that baseline is either a player's talent, how a player performed against top competition, how a player performed against lesser competition. So I do think that you're doing your best to kind of combing through, what you see, both in terms of when you watch the game and also when you look at some of the numbers that we are able to dig up. That's kind of the name of the game for us. But ultimately, for this Tennessee team, like independent of the schedule, I just see a franchise, and I understand there's been a lot of twists and turns, and if there's been a constant for this franchise for the past however many years, call it half decade, it's been changed. But I think there's some real cohesion now between front office and coaching staff with Mike Borgonzi and obviously Robert Saleh, and a lot of pieces in place now that have some familiarity, either of them, that gives me a lot of optimism that going forward, this team is going to make incremental steps that result in them being back in the playoff picture in the next year or two.
Now, Phil, we have talked a lot about the upgrades the Titans have made, especially at the wide receiver position, because this is a position that have been struggling at least since A.J. Brown left. And it seems like finally they got a group of guys that can truly go out there and play. And from a fantasy standpoint, how do you rank this group of receivers? Are there sleepers in here? And I don't want to call Cardale Tate or sleeper, but these are obviously taken first year, but Calvin Ridley hasn't got many points when it comes to fantasy. One, because he's been injured. But how do you see this group?
Like this group, and my optimism on Cardale Tate has resulted in me ranking him higher than any of my cohorts here at ESPN. Nobody is optimistic in terms of ranking as I am on Cardale. The guy that probably will be most frequently mentioned as a sleeper is a player that has just been really solid for fantasy for the past couple of years, especially last season. That's Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale quietly is amongst the NFL leaders in catches over the past couple of seasons. And, the big play upside may not be Derek Mason level, but it's pretty darn good. It's better than maybe perhaps he's often cast as. I think people think Wan'Dale 5'8" or 5'9". This is just kind of a slot guy. And he showed some real big play upside last year. So Wan'Dale's probably the guy that I have the most, but he's the one that I think is is sort of the sleeper in the group. It's a pretty intriguing room though. And certainly Cardale and Wan'Dale and Calvin Ridley will lead the way. If I had to guess, if they play tomorrow, those would be the first three wide receivers on the field. But it's a nice problem when you've got two players, Alec Eilmanner and also Chimere Dike, who played meaningful roles last year. I mean, Chimere was amazing as an all-purpose player on special teams, but the fact that you have that's a pretty darn good 1 to 5 in the receiver room right now. That if you're just developing those guys in the back end, that's a nice starting spot for a wide receiver group.
Field, before we let you go, tell us what we can expect from ESPN's Fantasy Football Marathon, which begins August 24th.
Yeah, looking forward to it. There are people like me who have no life and spend way too much time talking about and thinking about fantasy football throughout the year. And then there are people like the two of you that have, much more normal life and probably play golf in the summer or, go to the beach, the lake, whatever it might be. And think about fantasy football much later. We consider the fantasy marathon kind of a one-stop shop for 24 plus hours to get folks ready for the upcoming season ahead. It's rankings, it's sleepers, it's breakouts, it's fun, it's hopefully entertaining, it's informative. So we'll be rocking and rolling, and we conclude it every year with a mock draft, which is always a highlight. We do a live draft with it'll be 10 or 12 of us this year. That was a great time. So we're looking forward to it, and hopefully getting a lot of Titans talk in there.
Field Yates of ESPN has been our guest on DMase, Bingen, and Donick, as he just said. Be sure to check out ESPN's Fantasy Football Marathon, which begins August 24th. Field, we really appreciate your time. We'll have to do this again soon.
Thanks, guys.
615-737-1025. We will react to what Field had to say. You can as well. 615-737-1025. Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, 1025 The Game.
How much more difficult do you think it is to have a good running game to support a young quarterback when you're running that much shotgun three wide? It seems like there's a trend right now. The teams are going bigger with two tight ends and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brian Daboll's a shotgun guy. He's done that back to the days where he was coaching Josh Allen. And the issue with the running game in a shotgun is if your quarterback isn't a running threat, then it just makes it a lot tougher, because what you're losing in a shotgun is you're losing the back being able to go downhill. But if you have the option game to go with it, then it makes that subtraction worth it. But Cam Ward is a mobile quarterback. Like he can move around a little bit, but that's not really his game. He's not like a Josh Allen where he's going to pull the ball and break for 30 yards. So when you lose that, that element of going downhill, it just makes it much tougher. And that's why a lot of these running games are getting under center more, getting those heavy tight ends in. So we'll see what Brian Daboll can do with that. He has put together some good running games before, but it does make it a lot tougher when your quarterback isn't a huge running threat.
That was Ted Wynn of The Athletic on our program yesterday, talking about the Titans' running game. We were talking about this at the beginning of the program. Are the Titans even capable of having an effective rushing attack this season when you consider a couple of factors? As Willy asked Ted Wynn about yesterday, one, the Titans run a lot of shotgun, and Brian Daboll also runs a lot of shotgun. So that's number one. Number two, the offensive line. It looks like it's going to stink again. Number three, Cam Ward, not much of a scrambler, certainly not as much of a scrambler as Brian Daboll's previous quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, and Jackson Dart. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears don't necessarily strike fear in opposing defenses. So it has us wondering how effective the Titans' running game can be, which we know is important to the development of a young quarterback. But Derek, one thing we did not earlier that I want to talk about with you right now is the NFL shifted toward heavier personnel last season, according to Sharp Football Analysis. The league average of plays with two or more tight ends on the field last season, 33%. And yet the Tennessee Titans basically lived in 11 personnel, which is one running back, one tight end, wide receivers. The Titans ran out of 11 personnel, ran play, not just running the ball, ran a play 0.8% of the time, which lived average 6.4%. So the Titans ran a lot more 11 personnel than league average. So I'm curious for your opinion on why the league seems to be trending toward the usage of heavier personnel, and if the Titans should perhaps look into not going all the way there, but maybe taking a page out of the rest of the league's book.
I think it's just like anything else. Once you go so heavy one way, eventually you come back the way. You saw all these, 11 personnel and trying to spread defenses out. So what did defenses go do? It went when it got faster, not as big ends or outside backers or backers, inside backers. So they wanted backers that could cover more so than anything. So now teams are saying, okay, if you're going to do that, well, we did anything. Force you with our double tight ends to either declare yourself in a different personnel, or we're going to run down your throat, or we're going to run the same offense out of two tights, but make it very difficult for you to cover our big tight end. The Titans don't have the ability to do tight end thing about both ends going and be contributors. Every the Titans have their roster is built away from an offensive point. The Titans' offense is built fast. Got 20 out. Slim, tall, move down the field. You can get down the field. Their offense is built a little bit different. The personnel is. I'm not sure if they have the personnel right now. Daboll's offense. So I'm not sure if they have the personnel now and go from a shotgun team to now a team. They do it, and you're starting to find out more teams are, but it's something that you can just all of us can figure it out. We're gonna run majority side of you got the personnel for one to do that.
Will, here are the leaders from last season in the percentage of plays run with at least 2 tight ends on the field. Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens tied for first at 51%. Pittsburgh at 48%, Arizona at 47%, Atlanta and Chicago tied at 45%. The Titans ran 2+ tight ends 24% of the time.
I think it is important because we were just looking at this ourselves. Teams do run in this day and age football a lot of plays out of the shotgun. The Rams had the least amount of plays from the shotgun of any team, percentage-wise, and they were still over 60% of the time in the shotgun. Because you think about it, 3rd and long is always shotgun. It's just more of what you want to do 1st and 2nd down. A lot of times, short yardage. Some teams run out of the shotgun, despite the fact that it's short yardage. They still will do it sometimes, and everybody's like, "Why would you run out of the shotgun on 4th and 1?" There's always that guy in the stands yelling, right? Shotgun. They don't make it. But I digress. In Bellinger, who is more of a blocking tight end. They have Helm, who's a really good receiving tight end. I'm curious if they find that they run the ball better with that group in there. But Johnson off the field, or maybe Ridley off the field, or how you would line up that. So it's a give and take, but it does look like historically Daboll and with Ward, this is another thing. Is Ward most comfortable when there's 3 wide receivers in that 11 personnel? It certainly looked like that last year. They wanted him to master that. And then as we move forward, let's see if they add layers to where he's more comfortable with different personnel groups.
He not went out and got Wan'Dale Robinson, then I think there would be more ability. You may see more 2 tight ends. The offensive line isn't that good. They still end up using double tights, but because out of necessity, because they give help to the tackles. That's not the case. But you gotta, and then I would say, okay, going more double tight than they did season. God, you want your best players on the field, or your best personnel. And right now they've put this team together from an offensive standpoint. Their best personnel is 11 personnel right now. Because the wide receiver, a lot of money to spot guy. Really took a, but they brought him in here with the anticipation of being able to pull the ball more. Then you got young guys that are developing. So this team it looks more and more like an 11 team than it would a tight end team.
Here's another thing to consider with the running game and the personnel. The team hasn't been in a lot of games. You could probably count them on one hand over the last 2 years where they are leading and need to run the clock out and need to chew up time in the quote 4-minute drill. Off the top of my head, I can't think of more than one. I'm struggling to come up with one, right? That means that you're going to be more likely to be in those passing attack kind of things where we're behind. We've got to throw it. That affects the running game, right? A lot of times where you get your best work done in the running game is you're running when you're winning. So that is something to watch for.
Another interesting note, all of this, by the way, from ESPN. We mentioned this earlier. Cam Ward, only 9 designed runs. 2025. 9. 8 of which came after Brian Callahan was full. I'm reading from Ben Solak of ESPN. When Brian Daboll took charge in New York, he asked Daniel Jones to carry the ball more. Jones went from 1.8 designed rushes per game in the 3 years before Daboll to 3.7 per game in the 3 years after Daboll was hired. will also clearly encourage Jones to use his legs as an outlet in the drop backs in the Dable era. So a noticeable increase in design runs per game and scramble rate. So again, I am really fascinated to see, and maybe we see it tomorrow night a little bit in the preseason opener because Cam Ward is projected to start. This is something I'm going to be tracking throughout the season. I want to see if Brian Dable asks Cam Ward to run more. His history suggests it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I can see it happening, but you say when you say run more, he only ran 9 times last year.
I
So
know.
are we saying like you need to run 15 times, 18 times? Maybe that
Design run per game season.
I don't know how deep they go with this, but like I'm wondering, a quarterback sneak on a 3rd and 1, is that a design run, or do they go out? Like I think
it's a good question.
I would hope that you were taking some of those out, but I don't know. That could affect it, right? But either way, I think really good observation that it's a theme, because we want to know if Ward is capable of being a runner, because last year there were major questions about that. I don't remember too many times where he ran the ball effectively or even escaped made plays. These are things that you hope get better in year 2.
You're asking him, and he's going to need to do it. You're asking him to make more of a part of his game when he hasn't done this school, like since Incarnate Word. But at Washington State, at Miami of Florida, he wasn't a running quarterback. And now now it's like, okay, you're going to have to run to open up things for us. You're going to have to run to be a part of the run game in order to, make things more honest for the defense. Because if you don't, the defense is never going to play it honest. And they never, at least, the first half of the season, they didn't even think about Cam Ward running the defense. He would. Yeah, I run around until I can get up and do that. So hopefully Dable, just that with McCoy, they put up Tim Moore to run. They understood. I really want you to run, but you're gonna have to run in order for our offense to generate something.
I think what will help Cam Ward, Willie, is if he is scrambling a little bit more. I think an issue for him last season, from my vantage point, was when he would get into scramble mode, he would try to make low percentage throws to get himself out of trouble. Theoretically, if Cam Ward does scramble more under Brian Dable, if he doesn't have the option he wants, he can pick up some easy yardage, things moving forward, versus taking a shot, a Hail Mary, so to speak, not an actual Hail Mary, but, throwing up a low percentage deep ball, trying to get himself out of trouble.
And we've looked at different sets of numbers from different sources that track plays like that, right? This is where analytics has come, whereas before, back in the dark ages, you'd be like, well, he was 12 for 25. They didn't start necessarily, at least for our purposes, the types of passes. What you're talking about, extended plays where maybe the choice is I can run for 2 or 3 yards, slide, and now we go into 3rd and 6 instead of 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 9, versus I'm going to try to wing it into this really small window and try to make a big play. The results on those plays last year, based on the numbers, were not good. Even though Cam Ward, what was the term that Field used? Playground something or other, like playground magic, I think is what he said. That Cam Ward showcased a lot at Miami in that big final year where he raised his draft stock to the top guy. He didn't have as much success there. So the decision-making process along those lines, does he get more efficient in those situations, knowing when it's time to run and take the short yardage, and when you can make that difference-making play using your talent?
615-737-1025 will take your thoughts on Cam Ward. He and the Titans preseason opener tomorrow in San Francisco, I believe at 8 p.m. local kickoff. So you might have to stay up a little bit late. But I will not hold it against you if you check out when Will Levis comes into the game. Just saying. But you might miss.
That's must-watch TV.
I was about to say,
That's
you
where it'll be
actually
most entertaining.
Exactly.
that's true. How about this? You watch Cam Ward, you take a break during Trubisky, you come back for Will Levis.
How about you just suck it up
And
and
you
watch?
and you
The whole
sickos
thing.
and you Vols sickos can stick around for the weigh-in. How about that? 615-737-1025. We'll wrap up the show coming up next. Willy Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 1025 The Game.
All right, let's talk twice daily. The rewards program is there every day for you. Have you taken advantage of it yet? That's what I've been telling you to do. It would be a tremendous benefit because every time you go to twice daily and you use the rewards program, you save money. You get points every time that you go in there, whether you're going to grab a pizza for the family for later tonight at dinner, if it's been a hustle and bustle type of day, or you just need to grab a snack or something. Every time you use that twice daily rewards program, you save money. You build up the points. You can enter into sweepstakes. And so you're going to save. Twice daily is always there for you. It's convenient. They're a proud sponsor here on 1025 The Game. We're glad to have them. So make it part of your fall routine to use twice daily. Build up the points and save those bucks. It's twice daily, fresh all day.
DMase, Bingen and Donick, 1025 The Game. Derek and Adam Bingen, Willy Donick. Peace out a little bit late. Okay. The Six is coming up next with is listening right now. And it's nothing against Frazier, who's a man of many talents. But there is something that we have to stop as a sports talk society, and that's doing radio shows or hits from your car.
He's on his way up to the press box.
Okay,
right now.
that's good.
Okay.
But you watch ESPN, you watch NFL Network, you watch any of these channels, and we'll have a player interview, and the guy will be sitting in the front seat of his car. I'm like get in the car, stand next to the car. Like when I see that visual, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this for some reason. Like it's just I don't know why it bothers me.
Mhm.
Frazier's going to the Geodis Park press box, so it won't be an issue. But I saw him waiting in his car, and I'm like, oh, Frazier, don't be that guy. Don't be that guy that does a radio show from your car. 6 coming up next with Connor and Frazier. Mason, a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
What did you spend your first paycheck on? Is it NFL rookie?
Oh man, bought a house. That's what I spent my money on. Marcy and I, we bought a house here, and right off of right off of Newport Corner. Oh.
Well, ESPN, all of the, maybe not all of them, but many drafts from this year, what they spent their first check on. Carnell Tate, ESPN, and that quote. Bought a Star Wars Lego Ultimate Collector Series set. Let me say that again. Bought a Star Wars Lego Ultimate Collector Series set. He is an avid Lego collector and is currently working on the Titanic. He also said he purchased a house in Chicago, his hometown.
Hell
but
yeah.
more importantly, the Legos.
My son loves Legos, and he's 24 years old.
I love
And
Legos.
my daughter just bought him a rare vintage Lego set for some, I don't know what it was. He told me what it was, still didn't know. But kids love Legos. I mean, it's good because it forces you. Yeah, it forces you to sit there and use your motor skill.
Okay, so Caleb Banks, defensive tackle, Minnesota Vikings, 18th overall pick. Apparently is a big exotic pets collector. By the time the Vikings made the number 18 pick of the draft, he owned 2 bald pythons, a chameleon, and a cane corso dog, whatever that is.
That is a big dog.
Animals. At the time, Banks expanded the collection when he moved to Minnesota. He arrived at training camp with an announcement: a tarantula and 3 more snakes had joined the family.
Oh, heck no. I wouldn't go to this house. Oh, too many tarantulas.
Speaking of snakes, Derek, what's the thing you ever saw in your football helmet?
Maybe some M&Ms or something that they put in there.
Oh.
Messing with me.
This football player in Arkansas wished he found M&Ms in his helmet. The Associated Press. School football player in Arkansas. Every right to be killed. Venomous snake helmet during practice. The Maumelle High student felt unusual movement inside his headgear following warm-ups last week and brought his helmet to an assistant coach for inspection. A slithering 2-foot cottonmouth discovered behind some padding. The pit viper, reluctant to exit the helmet. Police officers had to pour water into it to force the snake out and into a bag. Animal services technicians arrived a few minutes later, identified the snake as a deadly cottonmouth. Wooded area in the school. Cottonmouths are the second most snakes found in Arkansas.
Thank God that snake like a young man. Yeah. Oh my Lord.
It's terrifying.
That is terrifying. But yes, snake saw that and I'm like, what? Well, I know how it can happen. Man, oh man, that's why they tell you to hang your helmet up. Don't put it down, hang it up in your locker. Things tend to crawl inside your helmet and it may not come out. You see with the mouth. Oh, I'm glad you're there.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. See any
I don't do exotic pets.
with those either.
Ferrets.
No, ferrets. Not a new craze. Raccoons. Like raccoon. That's
That's insane.
Yeah.
For a cat, that's it.
want a raccoon.
Old T-Rack,
T-Rack.
old one
Yeah.
that's no longer with us. He's a raccoon,
Yeah.
allegedly. So,
Barnyard above.
I'm gonna say he was taken to the mascot farm upstate.
The Rainbow Bridge.
You know, used to, like, we used to play jokes on people. Put their helmet on, goes all over their face and head. We did that. Um, those times by in my rookie year. Yeah, I'm sure I did.
So someone would pour baby
Yeah,
powder
they would
into
put
your
baby
helmet.
powder in your helmet because the first thing you do, they wouldn't do it like morning for you to when you're getting ready to go out, you're getting dressed, all that stuff. Running a lot of guys running the training room for something, put the helmet down. Guys just or make sure you get to all underneath. As soon as you throw your helmet, all of it comes down. It's pretty funny. See what grown men do?
I'm not much of a prankster. Like, I don't know if I've ever pulled off like a really great prank in my
I mean, you were a part of, all the
Mhm.
you got to be watching your back, man. You got to be watching.
Rookie zing.
Yeah, and even get some of the veterans too. Get some of the veterans, team veterans with, you know, like grease bitten. Man, it's not got to deal with the whole practice. Get it all, man.
A prank.
I think sarcasm does a lot of the pranking for me because
Mhm.
people genuinely believe me when I'm sarcastic sometimes. So
See that?
Yeah.
that's the extent I go to. I'm not going to put sugar in someone's locker or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever pulled off a really good prank.
Yeah.
I've probably been on the receiving end of a really good prank. Probably wiped that from my memory. But I saw that story today about the snake in the helmet. Geez.
The prank that I can't say it because they may still do it.
You have to do it now. You have to tell us.
Steve Waterson, the old strength coach, great person, great strength coach too. He used to, right during Thanksgiving, and it really was young guys. During Thanksgiving, we used to have to go. They say, "Hey, listen, we know you're new to town. We know you're not gonna have family here. Listen, we are giving away turkey. You can go to Kroger's or bring them here. Some turkeys, you can take them home. Your family, y'all can cook them. That's our present to you for being here the first year here, especially rookies, because they know a lot of rookies don't have family. So, get them. You know what?
Hey.
Nothing.
Whatever.
So funny.
Thanksgiving, I think of a couple of years ago when my son, who would have been 3 at the time, locked in the room. We had to call the department. Yes, they had to break down the door.
You ever lock himself in the car? I had that.
Not had my children
Yeah,
lock themselves in the car.
We've had DJs that may have locked themselves in the car. Have somebody come out. No, eventually, because we were loaded. From somewhere where we're loaded truck car seat door, that in the trunk. Well, DJ he didn't really jump. He was like, so we were like, dude, actually he was 3 because he was moving around really good. And we're like, dude, no, you got to do this. And he was walking over. No matter what car seat, that a different time. He said, I don't know why. Little stuff that Range Rovers older. The covering over you can't really see in the trunk. This somehow, some way, got himself in there. The car was locked. So he was in there. So he had to push himself out of there and everything else. And he finally was able to let himself out. We have been there to do all that minutes. Really hot outside.
That
But we were trying to get him out for 20 minutes, and we finally ended up getting him out.
You ever lock your keys in your car?
No, I haven't.
Did that cool and call a locksmith. Come get it. Sat there for 3 hours.
You lock your keys in your car nowadays?
Well, some older cars.
Yeah, older cars.
Yes.
It was an older car.
Yes. One texter says, my son, when he was deployed in the Marine infantryman, was repeatedly stung by a scorpion into his helmet overnight. He didn't get any medical treatment. Well, first of all, sir, your son is tough as hell.
Exactly.
That is
A scorpion.
these two. Those scorpions. Oh,
Yeah.
third. I'm so flustered. What you can't. 6 is coming up next with Connor Newt and Nick Frazier. They will welcome your phone calls at 615-737-1025. But that will do it for us today. We will be live from First Horizon Park tomorrow at 3 p.m. with our friends at the Nashville Sounds. Mitch Light of The Athletic will join us to talk some college football. Ron Davenport will join us live from San Francisco, or more specifically, Santa Clara, to preview the Titans preseason opener against the 49ers. So have a wonderful rest of your day. We will talk to you tomorrow at 3.
Love your people. Safe, blessed, and wonderful day. I love you. The team loves you. You hear that music? Don't you forget about us, because we will not forget about you. We're back on these airways. Start at 3 p.m. on 1025. The game, discussing everything is leading up, as Adam said, to their first preseason game. And as I always say, we're going to be talking in.
You will be listening.
The 6 is next. Peace.